Alex Antry here, first thing in the morning. I want to thank the listeners for taking the time to listen to the first three parts of the Archon discussion podcast, or the Archon podcast series. And I'm focusing my attention on where we are influenced by the world of the Archons the most. And it appears to be, in my opinion, how men relate to women, how women relate to men. Specifically, how women perceive men, how women can easily tear down men, how women on this planet are under attack because they are the vessel that brings forth life. And so I've talked about this for multiple years. All we're doing now is connecting the dots a little bit further. There is an agenda to control the world of women. Okay. To have a new world order and to have that type of a system is to have the ultimate control over women on the earth. And right now, in our physical state of being, there is physical hardwire, not too different than that which has been shown in the Matrix as an allegory, something where we can be plugged in, hooked up, programmed, influenced, where things could be implanted, thoughts can be implanted, dreams can be implanted, voices can be heard. And we're also, ironically, living on the earth in a time where we look at things like the New Age religion, and I say that not from a religious background, but from someone that was raised within the New Age movement, which makes my experience a little more unique than those that were either raised to be Muslim, raised to be Christian, raised to be Catholic. Being someone that was thrust into some of the counterfeit spiritual teachings, also known as the New Age, and growing up with a psychologically abusive mother. I got to see how hypocrisy worked up close and personal. And later on in my life, as an adult male, having an interest in certain women in my life, some of them which had some New Age leanings. Myself at the time, quite a bit younger than now. Still very young, some would say, at 35 years old, but in my late 20s and in my early 30s, I had a soft spot in my heart for women that seemed that they were spiritual. Certain words might come up that make us think about spirituality, like consciousness, like meditation, like awareness. And for those that are a little more evolved in their experience dealing with certain characters that claim that they're one thing with their language and their dress and their actions on the surface level, but behind the curtain and below the surface, the real them is anything but the them that they described to be spiritual. So there's a huge difference between the New Age movement that's been growing for some time, and we can talk specifically about the hallmarks of what makes something New Age. There are Christians and there are other religious individuals that will label anything New Age that isn't their religion. And that's their own psychosis. Do not confuse the reasons behind my criticism of certain belief systems and ways of thinking, certain gullible thoughts, which we'll talk about, reaching out to spirits that they don't understand and allowing them space inside their head, voices in the head. We're going to talk mostly about that in this podcast. Because in my experience dealing with New Age women, whether it be my mother or my mother's friends, or women that I have been attracted to, there's been interference, archonic interference in my life through the voices in the head scenario. And I'm not necessarily talking about voices in my head, but I will say that each and every one of us, if we become weak enough, if we don't know what's going on, we can have implants put into us to change our thinking, to convince us that that dream that we had was really spiritual, to convince us that that realm that we were in our dream was a real realm instead of a simulation, instead of maybe a prison that we were thrown into in this, quote, astral realm, where in reality, instead of evolving spiritually, our spiritual essence, our spiritual energy was drained in any way that it could be drained while we were in that simulated reality. So talking about the voices in the head and talking about the New Age movement and discussing the epidemic of women in our culture. I don't know about our planet. I don't know if this is predominantly United States and Europe. I don't know if this is predominantly the Western white woman or if this also includes the Middle East and Africa. But we seem to have the hardwire. Men as well, but especially women. You can think of it as a modem. That part of our brain that when flipped on, when activated. However, that process may come to be. We can receive a certain signal. In certain belief systems, prevalent now, that some of those voices are angels, ascended masters, or enlightened beings that we are dependent on to upgrade our physical body, to make it to a place where we will survive the coming changes. Notice how there's even negativity and fear in an end-time scenario within even the ideology of the peaceful, no negativity, supposed no negativity New Age, that is labeling this world as one that needs to be moved around, changed around, improved. And all we have to do is just reach out to these spirits. They're going to come in, rescue us, take away our self-responsibility. And by the way, I do believe in angels, and I do believe in realities of the spiritual plane. I don't see everything as negative. But the very nature, the specific nature of thought that has been prevalent with a lot of women that believe they're spiritual in today's society and for at least the last several decades. You're dealing with core themes relating to vibrational shift that will fix the world on its own. You have the labeling of awareness of what is going on as negative. And when you see that meme repeated, don't be aware of what's going on. Don't look at what we label negative or what you want to label negative without even taking into account that is a very relative position to hold, that it's negative to have accurate information about what is really happening in your world. It is highly suspicious to see people fall under a spell and live throughout their own lives believing that it is detrimental to their well-being to be aware of what's going on in the world, that it is actually a positive thing to encourage their children to live in ignorance, or whoever else that they may have influence over. You will also find a lot of depression with women that have involved themselves in the New Age movement. And I think that there are several reasons for this. First of all, this is obviously not a happy collective shift in consciousness. And there are many women that have been involved in this many decades that have been promised this since the 1980s. This is not a new thing. And perhaps it goes even older than the 80s. But when we look at the things of the 80s, the 90s, all the way up until today, we see a lot of change. Now, I think there's natural ways of, and rational, explaining that we're on an uphill trajectory moving forward and that the world goes in cycles. Some people prefer to look at planets. I prefer to look at the sun. However, I don't worship the sun. I observe what's taking place. And I'm currently still doing that. By the way, we've had about 2 to 3 days of consistent geomagnetic storms. I believe a full 48 hours. And this is the kind of stuff that I believe connects us further with the spirit world. Even though you may hear some truth in some of these channeled messages, ultimately the nature of the sun and what's going on isn't discussed. You do hear various sound bites promoting the New World Order. This happened more so in the past, though, when people were a little less aware of what it really was or is. You also see some churches promoting a violent Jesus coming back to kick ass and bring forth his own new world order. So there's a number of groups out there. Aquarian Foundation is one of them. And out of curiosity, in 2003, I went to that group a few times. They were playing old channel tapes, supposed channel tapes, from someone that they used to call Master Kumara. Kumara is one of many names for God or Master, which are used in today's day and age. So it's not a very unique name, this Kumara. Apparently this Kumara dude, in the 1970s, apparently he was manifesting crystals coming out of his mouth. And he would do this on stage, and all these Aquarian Foundations sprouted out from these events, from these supposed photographs. Very poor quality at best. And I'm the type of person that's willing to believe, and even at that time, was willing to believe that someone just manifested a crystal. And I don't deny that this matrix is so unique that things of the out of the ordinary are extremely possible and are happening every day, miracles. But this Master Kumara, manifesting crystals while sitting behind curtains. There's no actual video of the real-time manifestation of anything. But it doesn't matter. It's like that poster. I want to believe. Well, that poster nails it on the head. Because there's a lot of people out there in this society that have self-esteem problems that I think that they should address. And I think those self-esteem problems deal with, are you really meant to be on this farm? Or are you really meant to be living your whole life at this crappy job in the city? Have you really thought about who you really are? These are natural questions to ask. But see, in the archonic world, you have these counterfeit spiritual movements that bring in these young men and women and their children when they're really young. And the real forces that are involved in steering such groups, of course you're going to have situations where there's no entities. There's just someone that's just pretending to channel. But in a lot of cases, they genuinely believe that they are. And what has hit me like a bag of bricks, and I think I want to bring some focus to this, it is easier for someone that wants to hear voices and wants to hear a signal, for them to receive a signal, or for them to receive some response on their Ouija board. It's easier for them to have those results than it is for them to quiet their mind for 5 minutes, than to genuinely have real love for their family, than to genuinely, truly connect with their divine feminine or masculine or both or whatever, to connect with that which they are. I firmly believe that it is easier for some of these women in today's day and age, in this world of gender warfare and in this world of disinformation about what we are, disinformation in this world about women being more intuitive than men, which has taken a pretty absurd turn. I don't necessarily have an opinion on one being more intuitive than the other, but I do have an opinion that that statement sounds like bullshit, in particular in this day and age. Maybe there was another day and age where things were different. I'll leave room open for that, but I'm not going to assume that. Actually, what I really think at this point is that that's a bullshit statement. And people have rallied around that opinion that women are more intuitive than men, increasingly in the last couple of decades. And it's really warped in some cases, the connection between man and woman. And it's also led a lot of men to becoming hypnotized or under a spell by not only the females that they've allowed themselves to become enslaved to, psychologically, spiritually, sexually, or other. In reality, they are letting the entity controlling the woman control them. The primary reason that I believe that women are targeted by archons so the world of man can be controlled is several. But females bring in life forms. They bring in genetic diversity. They are tasked with the ultimate task of tasks, which should not be overlooked, and that is to be a good mother and to not abuse your child. Okay? So a lot of earth women are given a gift of reproduction to treat a form of life that came out of them with love. I don't think that this is a realm where we just bring in children and we abuse them. We try to warp their minds and beat them and have them do our laundry and make those kids be our bitch. I don't think that's why we have this gift of reproduction. So the mother, as all mothers, throughout all time, they have had a responsibility. Just like the fathers in some cases, but especially the mother. And there is a deeper connection between the mother and the child, because the child literally lives in the mother for 9 months. It's also important to note that the human female gestation period is mirrored in the stars, is mirrored in the Mayan calendar, and that the sun itself rotates on its axis for 28 days. So it's not just the moon cycle that regulates the female menstrual cycle. It is also the rotation of the sun's axis, and that controls fertility. So there's a reason why, not to go too far off topic, the sun was worshipped in the past, because it was seen as a fertility god. There were certain periods where the sun would be bringing more life to the planet through the forms of more babies, increased fertility, all based on the sun's activity. Some people don't know this knowledge, and I would direct you to some of the coast-to-coast interviews with Maurice Cotterell. Very enlightening and very informative. He's also the author of Future Sciences. And so if archons control female thinking process through the voices in their head that they believe are ascended masters, you can control the direction of one's life. You can control the direction of that child. You can even manipulate the world of the man that is chasing that female, because that man is trapped truly in his lower self. He's chasing that female's sexuality, and he's allowing himself, if he's become addicted to sexual intercourse with that woman and the energy that he's receiving, if he has become addicted to her energy, then that man will cease to become or be a man. He will cease to be sovereign. That man will cease to be free. That man will become a slave. It may seem that he's a slave to that female. In reality, that female is a vessel for something else simply because she's on the earth at this time. And I mention in every podcast, maybe we should ask what we're doing on this earth and what we need to be contemplating to make sure that we're evolving beyond this earth. And so, through the female vessel that's being controlled, the male is actually being controlled by something else. And that archonic agenda, it goes by many names. Many people that are firmly stuck in the religious box demand that it only be called demons. And this is solely done out of ego. You can call it a demon, you can call it a jinn, you can call it anything else. You don't even have to call it a name. But we're not alone in this universe. And we're in our own petri dish where there clearly is an agenda to control the world of relationships, to control the world of man, and to control our direction. Obviously, I don't have to get into a long list or even be defensive. But there's obviously a long list of positive things that have occurred in the world of women in this last century. It's also important to realize when there are counterfeit movements that supposedly are about women's rights, which are really ultimately about destroying family and creating a more effective control grid and creating a society to where men and women don't have each other's back. They don't trust each other. So if one of them is under attack, if there is a criminal group, whoever they are, whether they're human or not human, I want you to think big in this. When a situation is created by archonic beings to where men and women don't trust each other, they are easily to conquer and take out. So obviously, with women, it's sexuality. It's things like rape. It's things like controlling genetics. It's things like what some people believe are alien abductions and doing things with eggs and cells. And it's things like what could happen in the future in a war-torn situation. Missing bodies, human trafficking, things of that nature. With men, there is an agenda to remove the male from the mother and to make that male a killer, a servant of the state. And so we can see the amount of women, obviously, in today's society that don't see something wrong with what the military is doing or what the corporations are doing or the amount of pollution on the planet. They're not seeing something wrong with maybe the roles that their boyfriends or husbands are playing because their husbands or boyfriends or whoever else or sons may be, as they say, bringing home the bacon. So because their own immediate survival needs are being met, they don't seem to show concern about how these things might be affecting maybe women overseas or the earth itself. You know, there are many women that claim that they have a closer connection to the earth simply because they have children. And so, they may wear certain clothing to promote the fact that they are that goddess archetype. When in reality, you'll notice some of these same women have no problem bedding down with a servant of the system as long as that money is coming in. Because ultimately, whether you call it a reptilian brain or something else, there's something about our physical biology that seems to be stuck in a game of survival. And it isn't until women start operating outside of that reptilian survival slave think and showing that they're able to have different men in their lives other than the classic dominator, servant, work slave, or whatever else, abusive jock, or super feminized male that they have control of, that they can literally put in their hand and squeeze the testicles anytime that they want. And there are some men that also are turned on by women like this that are aggressive because it turns them on. It's like a fetish, but it isn't spirituality, it isn't equality, it isn't consciousness. And so people are free to have whatever fetish they want. This isn't going to be a podcast about being judgmental. You can watch whatever you want on the internet. But is this really hallmarks of something relating to higher consciousness? Or is this more evidence that we're in an archonic world of hierarchy? So in this world where the dark ego has risen, where people are promoting counterfeit spirituality, there are a number of people that have engaged in things like channeling. And as I said, I think it's easier to hear voices and tap into something than actually truly come to your senses and actually develop powers of the mind where you're calm. Notice people that channel that also have no impulse control. They're very angry. They scream with their children. They scream with their mates. They're discontent. They're not happy because their energy field is being drained by the parasite that doesn't want them to be happy, that wants to keep them under control and dependent on that energy parasite. So a lot of people that got involved in the New Age movement years ago have been walking around with parasites that have infected their mind. And having seen this happen to people, and having seen people's personalities change over a period of 10 years, 20 years, I know what it looks like when someone has a hardcore parasite, that it's literally warped who they actually are and destroyed their relationship with their family from inside their own consciousness. I know what that looks like. The male and female version of that. But in my lifetime, I've noticed far more female than male versions, and I realize that females right now in this day and age are targeted. If they have any inclination to be spiritual, there's a lot of traps that come in that will point towards movements relating to groups, collectives, situations that will involve a form of hierarchy. Still waking up here in the morning here. It's like 6 something. And I'm starting to cough because my lungs, sometimes they feel like they're clearing out from being in a more natural environment. In a future podcast, I'm going to talk about some of the ways in which these entities, which I'm not afraid to call archons, by being afraid to call them anything, you're already playing with the energy of fear. But these entities, these archons, love to keep people in urban-like environments. Cities, big cities, the biggest cities on the earth itself. There's a lot of energy in these cities when you have a lot of human beings together that are living these lifestyles based on slavery, that are mirroring forms of slavery in the old world. Whether lifting things over their head in like in ancient Egypt, or whether they're driving a city bus, or whether they're waiting tables, making sure that their hot little firm titties are just bursting out of their shirt. They have no idea how our current world of slavery is only maybe a prettier, sexier looking world than the world of slavery in the past. And what does sexier mean? Sexier means people are turned on. It doesn't really matter that people are slaves. People in today's planet, women on today's planet, have no problem being sexually turned on by a man who's a full-fledged slave in bondage. Now, I understand there's weird sexual fetishes out there where people like slave sex and things like that to basically emulate the world of slavery that they live in. In a way, it makes logical sense, although no one ever discusses that's where the kink comes from. It comes from people mirroring the bondage and slavery and pain that they're actually going through in the earth dimension. So people that are trapped in that world of inflicting pain on others have some serious fucking problems caused by this current incarnation. It doesn't really make them evil, though. It means this is such a serious issue that literally like what we are and our sex drive and the people that we pick, like so much of it is controlled from this world or universe and those entities that operate within it. And we're now in a day and age where all these people are running around with cell phones, connecting with technology in a way that they were not, when the way their parents were not years ago. And you look at the movies that are out now, the Sci-Fi Channel, how many movies of the last 10 years have dealt with alien-human hybrids? How many movies about the Archons themselves have been made, not to educate us and teach us how to deal with parasitic infestation? Instead, it's these movies that pretty much depict us already under their control. And so Hollywood has a way of supposedly bringing out the truth, only to really paint the picture in the mind's eye of what the future is going to be before we even get to the future. And it is a future with alien overloads, lords. just like ancient aliens, projects a certain past with alien overlords, which are not slave masters, but they're gods. That's right, they're gods that came to humanity to help us. Yes, help us multiply and improve and build great monuments and build a large population, lots of human beings procreating since the dawn of time to create a massive petri dish. There's nothing wrong with love and romance, but some of the very things that we think are love are actual, just simply chemical signals firing off in our body and our brain. It may seem that it's happening in our spirit. There may be certain dreams that a female is having about a certain bad boy. Or there may be certain dreams that they are having about a certain good man, where in the dreams he's not a good man. And in their inner thoughts that they may think are their own or her own, she may be saying, this guy's a piece of shit. I don't really have any evidence to show that he's a piece of shit, but I'm not liking how I'm feeling right now. Giving, again, that man that power to alter someone's mood remotely thousands of miles away over email. And what I believe is really going on is a lot of psychic warfare and energy warfare, where you have archons in the dream realm pretending to be someone. In some cases, maybe a lover, maybe a potential friend. In reality, they're just holding up a projection of that person while engaging in the psychic attack. The psychic attack could be a number of things. It could be an invasive spirit in one space that takes the form of something. It could be an attack coming with that form. And so a lot of women get bad vibes from men that are having issues going on, like interference that's trying to prevent a friendship. When these archons come in through the dream realm, it's like something out of Freddy Krueger or something out of a bad movie, but it's not a movie. It's not a movie. What I've come to learn, and for years I didn't talk about this, it would take some more time and writing to maybe remember all the specifics. But over the course of my whole life, I would say 5 comes to mind. 5 different times that women have told me that their dreams had been invaded, and I was in those dreams, and there were certain things in those dreams. Well, I'll give you one example. They started attacking me and my mother in 2012. And through a lot of psychic attacks from the archonic realms, I believe, my mom was pretty much turned completely against me. And there was a lot of dreams that were implanted. And you have to understand in New Age thought, if there's any negativity in like a dream realm relating to someone, it's automatically assumed that person caused it. It's kind of like the thinking that, if you were attacked, you deserved it. It was your karma. So likewise, I gotta get this rooster to stop walking in the RV. And I'm sorry, this is not professional radio quality. I'm walking around with the cell phone using the voice memo option. It's either this or nothing, my friends. It's either nothing, this or nothing. I hope you appreciate it. This is not a typical radio format where I'm able to focus, where I have notes. This is a stream of thought podcast. The benefit of the stream of thought podcast is I'll end up saying things that normally I wouldn't say. So I think what was happening is my mom was having her dreams invaded where like we were having sex or something, like something really extreme. She didn't say that that's what's happening or that's what happened, But that's what I was hit with. I've also been hit with certain nightmares that come periodically, where I'm in some sort of an astral dimension and I'm running to avoid capture for some sort of murder that I committed. And it wasn't like something in the past. In the astral realm, it was like right there, it just happened. Of course, the murder didn't happen, only me being Guadam leaped into a reality to where I'm running. I am the running man. I am the running man. So that is a hallmark of a heavy psychic attack on my own person. And what I've come to learn is that certain women that I've dated or tried to date, very soon afterwards, they would have dreams. Dreams about me being a cheater, being involved with other women, like something ridiculous at that time that this person was telling me this. And this was 2010. So I would say since at least the 2009 period, but perhaps my whole life, I've had a certain amount of archonic interference in my relationship with women. It primarily comes through the dream realm and through the realm to where they're awake and they can hear voices and they can remember what's being said. And so a lot of women go through life on autopilot, thinking that the vibes, I sense vibes. I get bad vibes from him. I get good vibes from him. This is how women are under mind control. They think that the vibes they're sensing are accurate. And because our bodies can be manipulated through the sexual senses, through one's desire for drugs, and through drugs, one's perception can be scrambled, altered, reprogrammed, rewired. And I'm thinking about one particular example where one person tried to lead me to believe that they actually had my best interests at heart as far as leaving Portland and where I would go. And the reason why it seemed like this person cared the most is because they were the only person that was helping out financially. And without this person's help, I would still be in a bad situation. And I came to learn that this help came with a few things. It came with constantly being told about this other person, this male that she claimed was her boyfriend or a friend. And he would pop in and out on Facebook. And some of my friends said, this guy doesn't look like he's a real person. This Patrick. And I don't really know how to say his last name. But I began to wonder if this person was even real. I kept being told by this female, this person really doesn't like you. This person says this about you. But I like you, almost kind of like to get one man to feel defensive, to pull me into that world of the boyfriend and girlfriend arguing about my value, of which I've been told many stories about for years. Ooh, my boyfriend says you're garbage. Ooh, my girlfriend says you're garbage. I mean, I've heard it for years. I don't know what is up with boyfriends and girlfriends throughout time, feeling like they need to repeat to me that their significant other thinks I'm shit. And what I noticed about this Patrick guy is, so this female supposedly was wanting to help me using different names on the internet and on social media, so you don't really know who you're talking to. And it seemed at first that she told this guy Patrick, this guy Alex is awesome, you should like him, go over to his page and compliment him, and like his post 20 times. So there was a period that followed where this guy would come over and go, hey, Alex, love you. Awesome, love it. Explanation mark, bro. So cool, bro. It was like uncommon over. It was too much flattery, if you know what I mean. Like 20 likes, 20 comments. And I noticed she would do the same thing. She would come and like in the form of 5 at once, or 10 at once, or 20, just like him. So this continued for a few months, and then he came into my, he started sending me messages saying, You really need to contact her. She hasn't heard from you in a few weeks. She's been in an accident. This is like after she deactivated her account. She would multiple times play the abandonment game and just leave me hanging. Like, that's it. I'm not talking to you for a couple of weeks. Enjoy it, honey. I paid you for it. I paid you to hurt you. And I'm thinking that this is kind of like almost demented. It's like the guy that gets the prostitute, pays the prostitute, and then starts slapping her as he's having sex with her. This female, though, or woman, if she in fact is female, whoever she is, was doing the same game with me. And I'm not sure what the objective was, or if there was an objective. I'm willing to say that her intentions may have been positive the whole time. But we are dealing with a potential voices in the head scenario, where it's either archonic influence or it's influence archonically through this Patrick person, if he's real. But if this Patrick person is not real, as a lot of people have come to believe, and this person has since deleted their Facebook account, that really brings the conversation closer to archonic influence through the voices in the head scenario. And I think we need to pause and talk about this. If in fact this was a fake Facebook account, and this male named Patrick was sending me messages saying, this person that wants you to contact her, man, she really thinks that you're her kid. And he kept saying this to me. Now, at the moment, I was going through a lot of upset emotions dealing with my living situation. And I've also noticed that throughout my life, when I've been in very difficult living situations, if I'm talking to certain people, they may choose to freak out on me during that moment, or create a abandonment situation, or tell me that I need God's forgiveness and I'm no good. And these messages were starting to come through this person. I basically snapped at this Patrick person and said, I don't need a mother. And the reason I don't like anyone trying to act like they're a fake mother is because there's a lot of pain with my real mother. And so I did everything that was right at that point, saying, no, I'm not going to start believing that this woman's my mother. That sounds like some mind control to actually create a trauma-based mind control scenario to then later abandon me, which is basically what was recreated a week ago. Because what happened was this Patrick guy would come and go, and she would tell me, oh, Patrick's saying this, and then he would go away. I would just try to visualize the archonic influence going away. And what I noticed was that the archonic influence did go away when I prayed for it to go away. And I did come to the conclusion that this Patrick guy was not real. That this person was somehow manipulating me, my emotions, whether I'm a good boy or bad boy, whether I deserve, any contributions. I was also scolded several times when I did mention a few times that maybe the audience might be able to help. There was this sense that this person wanted me to become economically dependent, to actually believe that no matter what, this person would help me get land. That no matter what, and knowing that this voice came in named Patrick, because Alex wouldn't do the same for you. I'm not in this situation to do the same for her. What kind of insane logic is this? Clearly, this is an attempt to hurt me and break me down to the point where maybe I even do something self-destructive. Which also leads me to believe that even though I've been profiled by these entities, that I can be hurt through this person and the mood swings, that I can have a negative emotional reaction when the voices come in the head and tell her he's no good, he's evil, he doesn't believe that you're his mommy, he's bad now, like really weird shit. And I was also told by this person that there were an amount of drugs involved in her life, from Vicodin to antidepressants, and when those two together and more are combined in alcohol, and maybe, strange friends either in the head or literally beside you, a Patrick in the flesh, saying that maybe he is a real character. This is like something out of a weird movie, guys. But it was after this experience that happened to me recently that I decided that I would stop being afraid of what my audience would think about me. And I would actually do a podcast about how some women are controlling the world of men through the voices in their head. Those voices in their head could be coming from a real person that's in a position of influence that may have a voice in their head. You know, like the woman that chases the bad boy, who's the asshole, who doesn't do anything but make money from the system, but doesn't actually do anything for the world itself. And knowing that this person, this male, developed some jealousy towards me, granted maybe he is a real male, and how she tried to come and tell me over and over and over, this guy doesn't like you, as if I'm supposed to like defend myself. And I realized this was psychic attack. And when you accept money from people, there is a way they can affect you. And when you're homeless, as I have been, and you're willing to take a gift from someone, when someone makes a gift of a larger amount than anyone has made before, which she did, it took a lot of help for me to get the RV. It took a lot of help for me to get here to the San Luis Valley. And I told this person multiple times, thank you. Please don't give any more than you can. I did say these things. Instead, this person did what they wanted to do. They would send money, then they would send money a few days later. And I realized something. This woman is trying to deeply get involved in my emotional body in order to hurt me. And that's exactly what she did multiple times. Now counting 4 or 5 times, she's played the abandonment game. You know, you're really not worth it. You need to pray for God's forgiveness. How dare you? How dare you? How dare you? You son of a bitch. You would never do the same for me. Oh my God. And what I'm seeing like this person coming off of whatever drugs they did the night before. Intuitively. I'm intuitively picking up on the fact that we're not alone in this conversation. I'm holding back by force my own paranoia, going, this person sure has shown a lot of interest in where I physically am. I hold my paranoia at back and try to stay rational as I realize this person completely threw me under the bus within a few hours of me blocking the other woman that was trying to track down my physical location. Also writing me angry emails sent saying, you don't own the San Luis Valley, as if I ever said I did. I clearly stated I didn't want this woman near me or following me. It's funny how when I put my foot down and I blocked this woman that was actually in real time trying to find out my location for whatever reason, either her own obsession or, worst case scenario, she's tracking me for somebody else. I blocked this woman, and the other woman, all of a sudden, is having red in her eyes. I'm no longer worthy of supporting. Now, of all the times to do that, the only time I really was thrown under the bus in what feels like for good, and it's probably for the best, because I don't want to be controlled anymore by this person's abandonment, replay, broken record game. Once this person somehow or another got a profile on me, and what makes me tick. And so what I'm trying to explain, some of the women understand, some of the women may not. There are ways in which someone can pretend that they care, either financially or through other means, because they're trying to draw the attention on them like an energy vampire. Or because they're under the control of something without knowing that they're under the control of something, and they feel they've been directed to help me help this guy. Go help him. And they may think that they're helping. There may be physical evidence that they helped monetarily. But behind the scenes, psychologically and spiritually, there is this whole world of psychological control. There are all these emails in which I was being scolded almost for considering living in my RV. And there was a great amount of time spent over email on whether or not I would live in an RV. And this person stepping forth saying, I, for one, am not going to let you freeze to death in your RV. All these things were said that led me to genuinely believe that this person genuinely cared like a mother. Only to find out that that sense of someone loving you or caring for you can be taken away with a flip of a switch to recreate the trauma of abandonment by mother. More so for that person to do that and enjoy that. To enjoy the sense of hurting a person that previously you thought was your little boy from another incarnation. To literally have a belief that seems to be based in love. To in fact only entertain that belief for a period of time to get that emotional connection, to then turn the tables and go, "Hoo-yah, you piece of shit. Pah, pah, you ain't worth nothing. I leave you here. I leave you here. You dog, ya. You dog, ya." And then to step back and go, whoa. I have never experienced anything like this before. For the most part, my entire YouTube audience is living completely in poverty from what I understand. And so there's no help and donations coming in. And so I embraced this opportunity, which in reality has helped me greatly. It hasn't been a 100% abusive situation with this person because nobody else helped. Now I did, and I sensed resentment from this person intuitively. I did hold on to my job at amtvmedia.com. And I feel like some praise that I made in some recent YouTube videos may have upset this person and also triggered that full-on archonic attack. What I felt this whole time is that this person was trying to buy me off and get me to engage in reckless personal life behavior, making certain expenses for things that in fact I really didn't need because this person would be basically dumping me off a short time later. Oh, go buy that. It's okay. We're going to take care of you. We're going to get through the winter. It's like the whole thing was a setup. And I felt like there was a little bit of resentment when I showed gratitude to Christopher Green for providing me with a part-time job to where, it's not a lot of money per month, but a few hundred or more is way better than nothing. And I genuinely felt a sense of animosity and resentment for keeping a line of income open to myself that did not come from her. And the reason I did that is I did not want to become dependent on a secret donor to outside the box. I wanted to have something that I've never had before off the grid. And that's a little bit of income for me to pay for gas, for me to pay for weed, for me to pay for food, for me to pay for coffee, for me to pay bills. I got insurance I got to take care of coming up after 1 year next year. I'll be taking care of that. I need to get my vehicle registered. I need to be able to afford repairs. Again, this person was the only person that helped me. But I think this is the classic conversation of, do people help out financially with a secret interest to hurt you? Whether they feel that they're getting some sort of pleasure from hurting you, or sharing with you that their significant other hates you and thinks you're the devil and thinks that helping you would bring danger to the household. Like, she would write all these things that the supposed person or invisible friend was saying. Going back to, was this Patrick an invisible friend? And what does this mean in terms of really an upgrade in my own knowledge base as to how archons can beam voices into the head, how they can maybe even present themselves to certain people. And for a moment, they may very well be real. It's hard for me to even say whether this Patrick person was real or not. But if he was not, then I would say that this is probably one of the best examples to provide of how non-physical entities can influence female human beings to such a degree that truly intelligent males can, for a minute, start to actually believe that that person has genuine affection for them, to the point where personal addresses are being shared. GPS coordinates. She has the GPS coordinates to the land that I'm on. It's funny that she just pretty much dropped out of sight the second it was clear where the land actually was and that I was there. Of course, I'm not trying to make accusations or go too far down the rabbit hole of speculation, because this Patrick person may very well be real. But to bring this conversation to a close and bring up several other examples, I need to make the point of this podcast very clear. In this day and age, there clearly seems to be an archonic infestation of human consciousness. And there are countless women out there that are following subtle cues and leads from what they think is their intuition, believing in many cases that women are more intuitive than men. And there is an abundance of deceiving spirits on the planet now that enjoy getting involved in relationships, implanting thoughts, implanting dreams, destroying families, and knowing what they've done to my mother, and the implantation of sexual dreams. And I know what they've done to me. I know what it's like to wake up in a false astral realm and to know that you are innocent, but to be trapped in that realm. Also, last night, it wasn't a nightmare, but after I did those series of podcasts, there was something trying to put me or drain my energy in a dimension of reality last night. So as far as I'm concerned, the war is on, and I'm not going to lose this war with these entities that are trying to reroute the conversation that I'm having. I'm going to talk in future episodes as to how the archons will come in through our own ego and our own consciousness once we have conquered the obstacles around us. And that's how they come in with some women. Through flattery, through the spirits telling them that they have all the answers, that they have a clear channel to God, that they're a pretty little goddess, that they are pretty much without sin themselves. And that way they don't ever progress on their own true spiritual path. Instead, they become tools of the archons to deride and derail the good work that men are doing. When some of us are really trustworthy and loving, and I'm not saying I'm perfect, I'm anything but perfect, and there's probably people out there that would just bash me all day long, but I still think that I'm my own biggest critic. There are people out there that would say horrible things about me, but there isn't a very large circle because I haven't lived a life where I've gone out to hurt people, to rob people, to intentionally engage in hurting other people. I've had misunderstandings. I've had people tell me over and over in my life, including family, that I have no value. And I've seen the dark spirit re-enter people that are weak-minded, either because they take drugs or they have a mental illness, and they're easy to archon hijack. And so, in dealing with mentally ill women, of which I've dealt with a lot, no, I mean ones that actually knowingly, admittedly take pills for mental illness. I'm not just trying to be mean. I'm talking about people that admittedly take pharmaceuticals. There's a very large percentage of American females that are on pharmaceutical pills these days. And I do believe that excessive drugs and alcohol create environments, whether they just drink on the weekend and they get burned out and they go back to work, as I think this person's energy showed, that she had intoxication on the weekend and sobriety and work and focus part of the week. So it's like the voices were out of her head parts of the week, or Patrick. And then once the drugs would come into the situation, Patrick would be there, whether he's a real person or he's an entity, or he's a real person with an entity, there to control her. And then, of course, the hatred would start up again. The influence would start up again. The cruel emails would start up again. The trauma-based mind control would begin again with, the latest chapter of the abandonment experience. You're no good. I'm actually not going to help you get this land. Fuck you. So looking at this recent experience, knowing what they did to my actual birth mother, and knowing what they've done to certain women that I've dated, where they've entered the dream realm and said, this guy's a cheater, he's working with black magic, he's actually the devil incarnate. I've heard it all. This guy's going to get taken out by the government one day. You probably don't want to be with him. Otherwise, you're going to have to contend with us. Contend with the New World Order. They totally blasted a girl many years ago, 6 years ago, with all kinds of fears that she'd go to a FEMA camp or something if she were to be my friend. So when you're in this experience of being like a truther or going out on the world stage, even as simple as YouTube, and you are calling out the demons of this world, I will kid you not, weird shit will happen to you. From what I believe right now, as I try to bring this to a close, living a healthy lifestyle is important, and being moral. If I were to go out robbing or hurting or doing things to other people, I think that my life would be far more complicated. My life would be disrupted. And I believe that the only reason that these positive things have happened, even if there's been a little bit of psychic warfare to go with it, is because of the good deeds that I've already done. And it's important to me that I keep becoming a better person. And I'm not thinking selfishly, like one reason I'm interested in doing good is for good things to happen to me. I want to evolve beyond this matrix where I'm living alongside such sabotage. I want to find real love. I want to know what it's like to actually have a mother that loves me. I want to know what it's like to actually have a father that loves me. I want to know what it's like to actually have a home. Okay. I want to know what it's like to actually stand on my own 2 feet and say that I have conquered those dark inner influences that want to keep me held back. And by the way, I would talk to this woman every now and then about archonic influence, and she would almost flip out thinking that I was accusing her of things. Not to jump back, but there were emails written where she was interpreting that my words were screaming at her when this was the person that wrote in all caps. Sometimes Patrick wrote to me in all caps. Another reason why I was led to believe that this Patrick person may have been her, which is really a mindfuck to do that with someone on Facebook. So what I'm getting at is I don't know how long the world will be this infestated with the archonic influence. But to be honest with you, all of those that have been talking about the collective shift in consciousness, about this being reversed, they seem to be 180 degrees backwards in their forecast. From what I can tell, there's always been some sort of manipulation over female consciousness, but today, now, with technology, with cell phones, with Facebook, with other ways that women can be hit. And I do think that certain women that have talked to me over the internet that have tried to help have been hit. And I think some women know that. That's why they actually haven't reached out, because they don't feel strong enough to fight back against the resistance. Take a look at alexansory.tv. There's a new upgrade. My female friend with very obvious, clear psychic abilities. There's I guess a building friendship that we've had for about the last year and a half. She's the only female that hasn't flipped her personality on me yet. And this friend of mine, I mean, she, to the point where she sent me a few cameras, and she'll know when I misplace a camera. You can even call it creepy, but this is probably like the only genuinely, truly psychic female that I've known. Now, she lives many states away, and we're not connected romantically. It's more like brother and sister. It's more like teacher and student, and sometimes she's the teacher. But she has some, she believes she has some fond memories of me in a lifetime, a very long time ago. And that's why she's been helpful on a administrative level, because she actually understands my brain. Not only does she understand my brain, she knows I'm not evil. This woman knows that I am not inherently evil. She has an awareness of some of the things that I have an awareness of, especially with regards to, what's going on in the psychic phenomena field, psychic protection, but solar flares, electromagnetic energy. And I would say that she's a student like I am of today's day and age as to how we can evolve ourselves. This woman's been helping out with several websites of mine for several months. And she is very able to hear the voices come in that say that I'm basically no good. And sometimes the voices come in the form of a female. And this is a very unique experience to have, to where not only is someone psychically in tune, but they're able to note what's real, and they're able to note what is an unfriendly, sometimes cruel and mean spirit that comes in to say Alex is no good. Now, I also want the women out there that have echoed these thoughts about me to consider the potential that their thoughts are actually not their own. That in fact, there's no evidence that I've done any wrong to anyone at all for any reason ever, other than be someone that at times is frustrated, hard to understand. Sometimes I fall over my words. Sometimes my brain is able to more easily produce news and information. But other than be an imperfect human being, I am not guilty of going out and creating wreckage in the lives of other people or their relationships, despite all the times I've heard about a spouse, both boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, and wife, that genuinely did not like me as if it was necessary to impart this knowledge to me. There are people in this world that absolutely hate me. Do we also need to talk about how there are people in this world that will absolutely march into my father's country and murder every man, woman, and child alive? I don't need to be reminded that my kind is not liked. But for some reason, certain people feel a need to remind me of that. And I know the strangeness of this in this matrix, where minds can be hijacked, where people can be turned against people that they thought were their friends. All with a push of a button. This woman that's been helping me with the websites she's almost keeping a notebook at this point of the different things that this female entity is saying to her about me having no value, and perhaps other things that she hasn't repeated because perhaps they're obscene. One of the reasons why I'm living off grid is so I'm at least separated from a good chunk of the archonic influence. No matter how deep I try to take this, women will just view this as distrust of women. I think the term they throw out like a robot in some cases is misogynist. I have tried to be gentle for years in hopes that if I was too harsh, that I might scare away a potential girlfriend or female. And I'm now almost 36 years old. I'm out in the middle of nowhere. Thank God I have satellite to communicate to you, but I've got nothing but the flesh on my back, and thank God I've got an RV to live in. Through a little bit of emotional manipulation, as I just shared, I was able to obtain a better vehicle to improve my life, even though there was major games of the head and heart that were played each and every step along the way. I still am grateful to this person as a soul for being at least clear enough for a moment in time to see that I had value. And I don't wish any harm to this person. I think that the story needed to be shared, though. I think people need to hear how I got out of Portland, that a woman did it for a period of time, that watched me from a distance. And then the situation turned to emotional abuse, insults, and passing on messages from a third party, either existent or non-existent significant other boyfriend named Patrick. And then things started to turn into a really weird movie. On par with Beautiful Mind, on par with other things, making one wonder how many people are actually involved in this conversation or observing this conversation via Facebook message, via email. You know, you don't have to believe anything that was in this podcast either. And you don't have to keep listening. But I'll tell you what, the content of this channel is going to continue like this. And I'll also say one more thing. There's a certain number of you that will always wonder why Alex has a hard time settling down. It's because of these videos. Do you understand how mentally ill society views me for actually sharing these things? And I hope you understand how most all women view this as hatred of women. Thus, they put a block up, and the Archons that may be controlling the intentional community, they put a block up to make sure that I find no security and that I continue to live my life in isolation. The tables that I'm turning on the Archons are as such. I will evolve spiritually, physically, mentally, and emotionally in isolation. And they do not have the power to take much more from me. They are the ones that have reached the end of their line. This is a transition point where I'm going to rebuild my spirit stronger than it's ever been before. And I'm also filled with righteous anger towards the Archons because they have created sabotage in my life when I have talked about certain things on this channel, almost like clockwork. Something will happen, a misunderstanding, and it's almost like the Archons want to punish those and take away their voice, so to speak. Notice my voice has been really hoarse lately since I've tried to address this topic. Coincidence? Possibly. Stress of the body responding to such a topic that perhaps the body is resisting talking about? I wonder. But with that, we'll bring this podcast to a close. I'm Alex Ansary, coming to you from the San Luis Valley, discussing Archon hijack of human consciousness, specifically in the forms of implanted dreams and voices in the head that in many cases influence women over those they perceive to be their friends and those men in the world that they perceive to be evil and not worthy of love, in fact, worthy of scorn. These are all very important points to contemplate because we are not alone in this universe. And people that are not living spiritually fit lives, many of them in this day and age are being hijacked at this time, despite good deeds that they may have made at one point. Be aware and make sure that your thoughts are your own.